So, welcome back to the Dr. Doug Show. Today, I have a great guest for you to listen to if you're worried about stress, if you're worried about bone health, or really just if you're worried at all. My guest today is Justin High. So, Justin recently wrote a book that's coming out in the middle of September called Stress Nation. So, Stress Nation is essentially the summary of his work around cortisol, how cortisol as a master hormone has an impact on so many things in our body, including sex hormone, including thyroid, including sleep. The impact of these changes in our body are profound. And the work that he's done helps to draw lines from cortisol, from stress, from our lifestyle, from a lot of different things to all the things that you might be worried about, including your bones. So Justin and I get into cortisol as a hormone, why it's sort of an underappreciated, under talked about source of chronic disease. And then we talk about areas where we might want to look into our lives to help to identify, is this a cause of hormone dysfunction of cortisol? We talk a little bit about testing. We talk about lifestyle. We talk about supplements. He's founded several companies. One of them is a company called Rebalance Health. We talk a little bit about the products that he's created there, which have clinical significance. They've done their own studies on their products, which I'm always an advocate for supplement companies doing. So we talk about those products. We talk about his book a little bit at the end. So if you have fear around your diagnosis, if you're concerned around bone health, if you are concerned around anything, you should probably listen to this to get some tips around what to do about this cortisol, which might actually be an underlying cause of so many of the things that you're actually concerned about. Okay, Justin, hi. Thank you so much for joining me on the Dr. Doug Show. I'm really excited to talk about the topics that you bring to the table. So let's just start with an introduction of kind of how you got into this space and how this became something that you wanted to go so far as to write an entire book about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Justin High. I'm the founder, co-founder, and CEO of Rebalance Health. And Rebalance Health is focused on cortisol. We've been focused on cortisol since about 2019. We were the first company in this space that really took a deep dive into what cortisol does to the body, why, and what type of protocol could help support cortisol and balance out hormones for men and women in the world today.
Yeah, that's amazing. So let's get into kind of some of the foundational concepts here. So I think most people have probably heard of cortisol, but tell me a little bit more about this hormone, how you look at it as interacting with the human body.
It's a great question. So cortisol is what I consider the master hormone. And it gets a bad rap, but it has some very good benefits to it. Cortisol controls your blood sugar. It controls your immune system, helps your immune system. It regulates all kinds of wonderful things in the body. So we won't go too deep into what all the benefits are, but it's known as the stress hormone. That's how it's just known throughout the world, right? And people are familiar with fight or flight or rest and digest. The fight and flight is the problem. Why it's so interesting to me is because almost every molecule in the human body has a cortisol receptor. No other hormone operates that way. So when cortisol is elevated, you feel it systemically from your head to your toe. And it shows up in really interesting ways when you break it down. How does it show up? Lack of sleep. Shows up in weight gain, muscle mass loss, libido loss, brain fog, anxiety. It shows up in all these ways that people are looking at individually as individual symptoms that they're complaining about on a day-to-day basis. And when cortisol is out of whack, it does something very straightforward. It prevents you from falling asleep, and it prevents you from staying asleep. And why that's important is because guess what? You make all your hormones pretty much, let's not get into a scientific debate, but you make the majority, if not all your hormones, whilst you're sleeping. If you're not sleeping, then you're going to feel kind of lousy the next day because you make all your hormones for the following day, right? So how you slept last night shows up today in your mood, your energy levels, everything, right? Your libido, everything. And so if you have consecutive days of poor sleep, you're just on a hormone spiral going down. And people go, I feel like crap. I can't focus. I can't do anything. I'm gaining weight. I'm eating right. I'm exercising. Again, cortisol. You over-exercise, cortisol. You under-exercise, cortisol. It is the one hormone that we don't understand as how impactful it is on our world. And that leads directly into your world, which is osteoporosis, and it can affect bone strength, muscle strength, everything. So cortisol is a very important hormone that is misunderstood. And the simple cause and effect is directly related to sleep.
Yeah, amazing. I talk about this downward spiral of sleep problems because we have, in our audience, we have a lot of women who are postmenopause. We've got a lot of women who are perimenopausal, and a common theme is once you start having hormone fluctuations, once you start being less tolerant to likely cortisol, the sleep imbalance then results in worse cortisol, worse sleep, I mean, it just is this downward spiral, and it can really negatively impact both women and men, but definitely women in this time frame.
Absolutely. Women are substantially more likely to suffer from anxiety as a direct cause from increased cortisol. But there's a question that we haven't approached yet, which is why is everyone's cortisol so elevated? And that is
Let's get into why, and then I actually want to get into why women are more susceptible to it too, because I get some negative feedback when I say that, but I agree, but I want to hear how you look at it. But let's talk about just overall, like, what happened? Why do we see this hormone that is a master hormone? Why is this hormone so out of whack?
great question. You're younger than I am, so I'm going to talk about where I was. But I grew up in the '70s and the '80s, right? We didn't have the iPhone, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have social media, we didn't have Netflix, we didn't have Amazon, we didn't have any of this stuff. In fact, we kind of lived in a bubble. Our bubble was our local community because the news was on at a certain hour, right? There was a news alert every once in a while. We listened to music on the radio. We wanted to watch television. We had a few channels. You wanted to watch it late at night? Well, tough. Around midnight, national anthem came on with the flag and went to static. There was nothing else to watch, right? You wanted to watch cartoons? First thing in the morning. That was it. That was it. There wasn't a cartoon channel you could watch all day, right? You wanted your news? You had a newspaper. And then, like I said, a news hour. We were limited with the amount of information, the amount of content that came to us. You wanted to know what your friends were up to? You picked up the phone or you made a date and you met them, right? You didn't communicate through iPhones or phones or cell phones. They weren't around. And so what has happened in the past 30 years is unprecedented. We have accelerated beyond all reasonable knowledge back then as to what would happen. We just accelerated the pace of the world exponentially. And now content, right? Whether it's news, work, financial, political, family related, anything is coming at you like a complete fire hose. It's just being flooded at you 24 hours a day. And what has happened is we weren't taught how to use our cell phones or technology responsibly as human beings. Everyone looks at screen time for my kids, right? I have to put a certain amount of time for my kids, right? Guess what? Screen time's for everyone. It's not just for your kids, it's for you because believe it or not, we are all now completely addicted to content, to information, instant gratification. We used to go to the video store to pick a movie. There was one or two copies behind the cover. And if you were lucky, it was there. You grabbed it, you got to watch that movie that weekend with your family, with your girlfriend, whatever, right? Today, turn on Netflix. I can binge watch anything that was ever made, ever, whenever you want. And so we've become spoiled. We've become entitled. We want information, we want entertainment, we want content at our fingertips. And that has completely destroyed the circadian rhythm of our body. That circadian rhythm is the reason why our cortisol is off the charts.
Yeah. So let's dig into that because you mentioned sleep earlier. What about somebody who says, well, I still sleep pretty well, so I must be immune to this?
Well, you know exactly as I do. The medical studies prove that every adult needs 7 to 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. If you wake up once at night, it's clinically diagnosed as a poor night's sleep. So just because you may think you're sleeping well, I guarantee you're not, because things might show up in your life that you've become used to. You think this is the new normal. And when you realize that that new normal is not right, you'll probably open your eyes and goes, oh yeah, I'm really not sleeping that well. Oh, I did wake up 3 times in the night. Oh, I am restless. Or, my Sleep scores are not that great if you're tracking your sleep scores. How's your deep sleep? If you're not getting 60 to 90 minutes of deep sleep, that's not great. Some people I know are getting 10 to 20 minutes of deep sleep, yet they sleep 8 to 9 hours. Your body isn't getting the correct cycles in order to generate the hormones that you need to function the next day. And they'll show up in symptoms that you think are unrelated.
Like what kind of symptoms?
Brain fog, libido, weight gain. Biggest thing I hear from a lot of women with going through perimenopause or most menopause is, I can't lose the little extra weight I have around my tummy, right? That's the subcutaneous fat, right? Why is subcutaneous fat and visceral fat hanging around? Well, quite simply, your body's in fight or flight. You have elevated levels of cortisol. Cortisol is designed to alert you when there's a bear, a fire, something urgent is happening. It doesn't know when it's going to get its next meal. So it stores this energy and these resources and shuts down metabolism, shuts down libido. Why? Because it thinks you're in a state of alert and it's trying to protect you. It doesn't think you're safe. And guess what? The moment that you become safe and your body is calmer, your nervous system is calmed down, your mitochondrial system is all working better, guess what? The weight falls off of you, completely off of you.
Yeah, and I certainly have seen that. Let's talk a little bit about, let's get into the audience of, maybe we'll just go move forward in time. Talk about women in perimenopause
Mhm.
and how this can affect this audience more so than, say, a younger, a generation younger. Not that it's not affecting those women, but as women get into this midlife transition, say late 30s, early 40s, up to menopause on average at age 50, what happens in this time frame where cortisol becomes a bigger issue?
Absolutely. So let's be clear. What happens is your hormones are at the greatest potency as you transition from teenager into your 20s, right? Your hormones, the HGH, the testosterone, the estrogen, progesterone, everything is helping you become an adult, right? From infancy up. That's why you have higher levels of HGH, testosterone, etc. And then a woman goes into her fertile period, which is typically early in the 20s. What happens is around mid 20s to 30s, hormones in men and women, but we're talking about women here, it's very similar. All of a sudden, the sex hormones start dropping off very, very, very rapidly. HGH, testosterone, they start to drop very rapidly, which are critical for women as well as for men. The progesterone, estrogen, as we know, they cycle up and down through the cycle as you go through your different menstrual cycles. But what's happening is, as those hormones are dropping, your body is slowing down. You might not feel it, but it's happening. And the analogy I can use is, when we were in college, when we were in our early 20s, you could party, you could go all night, you could have an all-nighter, you could get up and do it again the next day, no problem. That's because you had high levels of HGH, high levels of testosterone, and your body was able to recover super fast, super quick, and it gave you a whole pass, shall we say. Try doing that today in your 40s and 50s. You just can't do it because your hormones aren't at the same potency, so they're not helping you recover. If I had to kind of remarket HGH and testosterone, I'd call them the recovery hormones because that's what they do. They help your body repair and recover quickly. And so because our bodies are making less and less and less hormones as we age, certain things become harder. And as those things become harder, anxiety and stress and cortisol start to elevate. So where you might have had, your cup full of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, right? And you had very little room at the top for cortisol to kick in. The analogy I can use is, as you get older, the ratios start to switch and you have more cortisol, less hormones. You can't recover so quickly and you're more susceptible to stress and anxiety. Now you add on to that life. Well, what's happening in your 20s? Not much. You're having fun, you're figuring it out, you're back in the world, you're doing whatever you want to do. As you start entering your 30s and your 40s, more responsibility starts laying on your shoulders, maybe family, college, aging parents, home, finances. So just as stress is getting more and more on top of you, your safety hormones that are protecting you in your 20s have just pulled the rug out from underneath you. They've dropped way down. So sleep is critical because if you don't sleep, you don't make that little hormone that you need biologically to function. And if you compromise and you're supposed to make X amount of hormones, but you make, half of that because your sleep is disrupted, your cortisol level starts filling up even greater. So now everything is exacerbated. Now, as you start going into perimenopause, even post-menopause, right, what's happening is you're still that new normal I was talking about. You've gotten used to operating off 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and that's how you're operating. And because your body isn't making the estrogen and progesterone that it needs during perimenopause, your symptoms are exacerbated. They're just simply exacerbated. And this isn't coming from reading a book or a journal. At Rebalance Health, we have lozenges to support menopause, andropause, and everyone in between. But we've actually backed it with double blind placebo studies. We've done clinical studies. We've been published in multiple medical journals. We actually published one this week at the Medical Journal of Nutraceuticals and Food Sciences. When we got women to take our product and to help them sleep and to help them calm down, guess what? Their hot flashes started to disappear. In our study, the outcome was out of 384 women that were at their end of their rope in terms of their symptoms, which were just driving them nuts and nothing helped them. The average woman saw an 80% reduction in perimenopausal symptoms, including hot flashes, libido, recovery, sleep, hair, skin, and nails, you name it.
Yeah, and I want to get into products because people are going to listen to this and they're going to ask the obvious question, which is, well, what do I do about it? So I definitely want to get into what to do about it, both from a product and lifestyle perspective.
Hmm.
But let's talk about women again as we age. So they go through midlife, they go through menopause. Now we have postmenopausal women, and I really feel like there's two big groups here. There's women who are supplementing their hormones with HRT, and
Mm-hmm.
women who are deciding not to, either knowingly or unknowingly, but they're deciding to forego HRT. How is this different in either of those groups? And then how does it affect the population and menopause overall?
It's a great question. So I don't want to stand on a soapbox because I can stand on a soapbox all day long on this particular topic, but I'll give you my 30-second kind of pitch. There's nothing bad about HRT. If you have a pre-existing disposition like cancer in the family, etc., obviously HRT is not for you. But in my opinion, HRT is a good product to have if given appropriately by the correct doctor. The problem that we have today is, in my opinion, HRT is the new Botox, and every doctor under the sun is administering it without going through the correct protocols and understanding about what they should be testing, which is you should have a complete, comprehensive hormone panel every 90 days as you try and figure out your dose. Why? Because cortisol is not controlled by HRT. There is no cortisol. HRT. Cortisol is something that is affecting you from the outside. So if you're in a high stress job and then you instantly decide, okay, I'm done, I'm going to retire, your cortisol levels are going to drop and your HRT kind of prescription should change dramatically. And if that isn't being taken into consideration, it opens up a whole new world of problems because now you could have way too much progesterone or way too much estrogen or way too much testosterone. And so you have to be constantly looking at your lifestyle and the factors that impact your world and your stresses in your world. And so cortisol is something you cannot control with HRT. Cortisol is controlled by your surroundings, your environment, and how your world is impacted. HRT, for the majority of people, is limited to three sex hormones: progesterone, estrogen, and obviously testosterone. You can take thyroid, HRT, right? You can do a ton of other things, right? But the majority of people don't understand this, and they go to like male clinics and guys are just getting their testosterone tested and that's all they're looking at. They're not looking at the big picture. How are you sleeping? How are you eating? How you're exercising? How's your water intake? It is more complicated than just, oh, your testosterone's low, I need X. And by the way, there is no standard testosterone number for men or for women or anything. And I'm frustrated with doctors saying, well, you've got to be above 600. They should be ashamed of themselves. There is no such rule. It is anywhere between 250 and 1200, and it's all based on the individual, not based on a book, which you can look it up. And that's the problem. All these Botox doctors are just, they're pushing out, not Botox doctors, but I'm saying like doctors are treating it like Botox. Anyone can have it, and they got to hit a certain metrics. That's not the case. You have to go to a specialist who understands endocrinology and can look at all the factors associated with it. And once you're balanced, once you're even and you're at the right ratios and you're getting quality sleep, the old you comes back. And that's the beautiful thing.
Yeah, well, yeah. So thanks for that. And clearly, you've listened to some of my content. You know, I'm a big advocate for HRT, and I'm a big advocate for optimizing HRT, meaning that we're talking about symptoms, we're doing testing, we have benchmarks, but only because we have to have something to put on paper, right?
Right.
So for men, we're not aiming for just 600. How are you feeling? How are you performing? What's happening with your body composition, et cetera? For women, this is a bigger space where I get criticized on social media for testing at all, which you know, I want to know what's happening with the patients. So we definitely test, but we're not just testing estradiol levels. We're not just testing progesterone. We're testing FSH. We're testing bone turnover markers. I'm looking at other factors, right? And that actually leads me to actually, before I get to this next thing, I did want to just take a quick step back. Something that you said that my audience will throw their hands in the air and scream out loud. Um, Around the risk around having a family history of cancer and hormones. So my understanding and the way that we do this clinically is that if you have a family history of cancer, specifically, let's say breast cancer, for example, if you have a family history of breast cancer and you're talking to a doctor about potentially going on HRT, you have to be really clear in saying that the risk of having an immediate family member that had especially a young cancer is already there. Going on HRT actually doesn't change that risk. So it's a little nuance behind that, but it's just something that I talk about a lot because I hear so many women that now have osteoporosis. They were told, oh, they weren't a candidate because their mother or their sister had breast cancer, and that's not actually a contraindication. So just wanted to touch on that. Um, so then let's get into the next thing, which is, is this something that is testable? Because we're talking about testing hormones. I do test serum cortisol, but I'm a little dubious on what it means. So tell me your thoughts on actually testing from a hormone perspective. What do we do with cortisol?
My chief medical officers and myself tend to agree that testing cortisol is a data point, but it's a very unreliable data point. You can test from blood, urine, and saliva, but it's a snapshot in time. It's how you're feeling at that exact moment. You can do a 24-hour urine test, of course, which is a little bit more accurate. But again, just carrying around a jug and urinating all day is a stressor in of itself. So really, the way that we like to look at cortisol is to look at your sleep scores. If you're beginning to get solid sleep, which we do see in our customers, then we understand that cortisol is being managed correctly. If you're not sleeping and you have poor quality sleep, it's a good indication that cortisol is elevated.
Yeah.
So,
What's your favorite tracker?
my favorite track, honestly, they're all terrible. I used to work at Apple, so I understand the efficacy levels of them. But consistency, if you have one that you like, or a ring, or the bed that tracks it for you, doesn't really matter. Just pick one and stick with it because that'll be the same consistency there. So if you see an improvement, it'll be in the same one. But you can't compare one to the other. They tend to have completely different outcomes.
Yeah, I've used Whoop extensively. I've used Aura quite a bit. Now I'm actually using Hume's new band, and it's a new one for me. And my initial response to this data that I'm looking at is, boy, they don't get into the weeds very much. I'm used to Aura and Whoop they get so in depth, but actually I kind of like it because
It,
I can't get lost in the numbers, right? It's sort of just like it's a big picture, 30,000 foot view of my sleep quality.
Correct, and I mean, I tend to get an email every morning that tells me my sleep score from the sleep AI thing on my bed, and I look at that, and as long as I'm above 85%, I'm like, okay, it's good. I'm okay. And I look at my deep and my RAM, and then I look at my wife, and my wife's like, how do you do that? What? Because like she struggles with it. Yeah, she struggles with it, and so it is. I kind of think of it as a little bit better than, at one point everyone was obsessed with their heart rate. Everyone was tracking their heart rate. Like, do you actually know what the numbers mean? Like, you want to get to an 80% or 30%, but it's so variable and changes based on your health and the quality of your lifestyle that it was quite amusing to me at some point that some of the data that is out there, for the majority of people, really don't understand what it's for and why. And I think the sleep thing is getting better. And I like the way that, like the Apple and the Aura Ring, are gamifying it a little bit, and you get the badges. And we get a lot of customers go, "Hey, I've never had so many good sleep badges in my life, or I've never seen a 90% sleep score." And so it's really, from that perspective, I think it's a great tool to help the consumer and the individual understand that things are either getting better or they're not. And I like the simplification of it. I can't speak for the accuracy and all that good stuff. It's difficult.
Yeah, I tell people don't worry too much about the details, right?
Yeah,
Like big picture, if your sleep's terrible, you can tell. If it's great, you can tell. If it's somewhere in between, is it getting better? That's sort of the
100%. And I agree with you. It's like when you do your testing, right? You do have to ask the subjective questions to the individual. How are you feeling? How are you sleeping? How's your energy? How's your brain? How's your clarity? That's the important questions. And if you're off.
yeah, I mean you should. But I think so many people get used to feeling off, they don't know what feeling good feels like.
100%.
And I see that because a lot of our patients, they've had poor sleep for decades.
Yeah, the new norm, right? Yeah, that's what I'm used to. That's what I get. Well, what are you doing? How can we improve upon it? And that's really important.
Well, let's talk about what they can do. So I want to talk about products because I looked at your products and I want to talk about some of the ingredients if that's okay. But before we do that, let's talk about lifestyle
Mhm.
because one of the areas that we struggle with, we are in a clinical practice that has lifestyle pillars. We're talking about nutrition. We have incorporated dietitians and coaches, and like we're doing as much as we can to hit all the lifestyle pillars.
Mhm.
Talking about stress mitigation and reducing cortisol is hands down the hardest piece.
Yep.
So what do you think about, like, how do people actually do this? Is it meditation? Is it like some structured thing, or is it just simply doing less? Like how do you guide people through this if you do?
You simply have to understand what the human body is, how it functions, what it was designed to do, and how maybe the choices that we're making today aren't the best for the human body. And it's quite logical if you're willing to listen and you're willing to make the compromise, right? If you're not willing to make adjustments to your lifestyle, it's a moot point. And so you can only help the people that want to help themselves. It's kind of like if I have a Big Mac in front of me or a beautiful salad with protein and olive oil on it, you know which one you should eat, but some people are going to choose the Big Mac. And it's the same thing when it comes to stress and cortisol. You know what's going to induce stress in your world. And so try and be mindful about how you go about setting up yourself for success during the day. So for me, it all starts with sleep. So I do not compromise. I do not negotiate with my sleep. That is absolute critical. So without fail, I set myself up to ensure that I can get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Now, it might not be uninterrupted because it's very challenging to do that every single night, but I do my very best to make sure that I set myself up for success. Now, I wake up every morning at 4:30 with my wife, and we go to the gym and we work out. That's our routine. So we're in bed between 8:45 and 9.
I was going to say, do the math on that. I love when people gloat, not that you were doing this, but I love it when people gloat about, oh, I get up at 4 or 3 or 2 and like, but they never say when they go to bed.
Hmm.
I'm like, well, that's great that you get up at 4, but like as long as you're going to bed at 8, that's awesome. Right. And you
Yeah,
can get up at 9 if you go to bed at midnight and you're a late chronotype and you're used to that and you do well. But
absolutely.
yeah, but I want to talk about sleep for a minute because boy, this has been an area of challenge for myself. I mean, personally, in my household, my wife and I have different chronotypes. Like this has been like a constant back and forth. And then I hear the same thing in my patients. So let me talk about one of the I think most important things is consistency.
Yep.
And what I mean by consistency is same time to bed, same
Yep.
time waking every day. This is circadian rhythm that we talked about.
100%.
But here's what happens with those of us that work on weekdays and not on weekends. We get this social jet lag. All right. Matt Walker talks about this in his book. This social jet lag of, well, now I get to stay up later because I don't have to get up as early. And literally like 1, 2, or even 3 hours, you're changing your sleep cycle. How bad do you think that is?
Very. Very. And I don't compromise. Doesn't matter if it's a weekday or a weekend. We are in bed at the same time. Your body can be retrained. Neuroplasticity is right there, right? You have to train yourself in order to look. We were designed to go to bed when the sun went down, and when the sun rises, we're supposed to wake. What's gotten in the way is our entitlement, our ego, and our basically we're destroying ourselves because we feel like we're entitled to. Um, and there's nothing embarrassing about going for dinner at 5:30 and preparing yourself so that you can focus on your sleep. I'd rather have a better quality life and health than be, egotistical and say, "Well, it's the weekend. I'm entitled to this," or, "I've worked really hard. I'm going to have this, 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 this." Yeah, look, no one's perfect, and occasionally we go out with friends and they want to eat later and so forth. Guess what? I know the following day I'm going to feel like shit, and I do. Right. And so that's it. So you don't have to be a Buddhist monk, but understand the cause and effect and be honest with yourself about the realities around it. So, yes, we go to bed very consistently and we wake up very consistently. And because of that, on the weekends, even if I wanted to sleep in, I couldn't. My body is up. My
Well, that's
body
the
is up.
problem. I can stay up late, but I can't sleep in.
Yeah.
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 So I can stay up till 11 and binge watch something on Netflix, but I will be up at 5:30.
Yeah.
It's guaranteed.
You're there. And the same thing with working out. It's been proven the best thing to do is work out in the mornings. It just, that's when it's the best, right? If you decide to work out after work or in evenings, guess what? You're raising your cortisol. You just are. And then you're going to go feed your body. You're going to eat, right? You're going to fuel it. Then you're going to go to bed. Well, guess what? Your bladder is going to wake you up sometime in the night to use the bathroom. And so that's the other thing that you have to take into consideration. We are aging. You might not like to hear it, but we're aging and you can't fight it. You're going to have a weaker bladder. You're not going to be able to retain foods as well as you used to. And so if you're going to eat, I want to eat at least 2 to 3 hours before going to bed so I have the opportunity to expel all the waste. So I go to bed on an empty stomach, an empty bladder, so that doesn't wake me up. I drink most of my water well before 3 o'clock in the afternoon in order to ensure that it is all out of me and I don't get woken up by my bladder. Aging sucks. I'm 50. It happens, right? These are just things that happen, right? I didn't just wake up and decide to do this. I've been doing this since I was probably 32, 33. And it started because when we had our first child, I used to work out in the afternoons after work. But if I did that, I wouldn't see my kids. Then I couldn't help them with their homework. And so my wife and I agreed that I would start waking up early. I go to the gym in the morning, come back, help with the kids, go to work, come back, and then I could be dad, right? And so it was a conscious choice to be a better father for me and the way that my family unit operated, so I could be at home and be with the kids. And as the kids got older and we didn't need to do early feedings and so forth, and they got to sleep in, my wife and I were able to go to the gym together. And that was how this evolved. So this isn't something that I decided to be trendy with. This is something that we actually consciously did in order to fit with our lifestyle.
It takes time. And I do think you mentioned the family piece of it. I mean, it was easier, before kids, obviously. And then young kids disrupts everything. There's
Oh,
no
for
way around
sure.
that. And now my kids are 6, 11, and 13. So now I go to bed and my 11 and 13-year-old are still up. And I'm like, good night, see ya. And I'm assuming that they're going to go to sleep. I'm pretty sure they do. But I can't worry about that because I can't stay up until they go to bed.
It doesn't change, by the way. It doesn't change. My kids are 20 and 18, and now I literally, I'm like, okay, you have a curfew. You have to be back by 11 or midnight, whatever. And my body will wake up at 11 and midnight because are they home? So the worrying factor kicks in. And so there's the reality behind you can do some of it, but you can't do all. But my cortisol elevates naturally because in my head, I know my kids aren't safe until they're home. And when they're home, I'm back out in like 2 seconds, but I just need to know that they're home.
Yeah, I'm at the stage where my kids are locked in the house. So we're good. We're good there. But I hear people use these as excuses and say, well, I have to stay up for this. Or, my dog wakes me up. Well, get your dog out of here. Well, I can't get like it's amazing the excuses that we can make. And so I was actually thinking, I was counting as you were going, I want to hear like the top 5 tips. So let me just review. So consistency, number
Yes,
1,
for
right?
sure.
Early dinner. So 3 hours before bedtime. And then I love the fluids before 3. I mean, that most people are, they probably are dehydrated all day and then they load
Yep.
liquids at night, right? And then
Yep. Yep.
you're peeing 6 times throughout the night. And so that's top 3.
But
Give me 2 more.
that's not necessarily setting you up for lower cortisol and lower stress. That's just what I consider life practices that are logical to set you up for success for better quality sleep. I believe in get up and don't touch your phone. Your phone shouldn't even be next to you. Your phone should be in another room or on airplane mode. It should not be near you because it is a stressor in of itself. And it is feeding that dopamine hit that you want, that you get from that phone. So it needs to be out of your room completely. I believe in getting up and going outside and getting sunlight. Just a big advocate for that. Barefoot, if you possibly can. I'm a big believer in grounding yourself, getting your feet in the ground. It's amazing how instantly you just calm down. Just do that, right? So, very important. No communication, no cell phone, no emails, no telephones, at least 90 minutes before bed, ideally 2 hours, right? Try and turn it off. And that's probably the hardest thing for the majority of people. Don't do that, right? So, have an extended ritual before you go to bed. Have a long shower, a bath, use magnesium, Epsom salt bath. Do things that help relax you, put you into a calmer state so that your cortisol comes down, so your melatonin naturally releases, and that's what prepares you for sleep and gets you in a sleepy state so that when you go to bed and your head hits the pillow, you're out cold. And so it's that ritual, that very important ritual. And watching a horror show or watching the news or getting angry or getting upset before going to bed doesn't make any sense. And I know a lot of people turn on the TV and do it. And if that calms you, then great. But I can guarantee for the majority of people, it's winding you up.
Yeah, and a lot of times they don't perceive that. They think this is relaxing, I'm checking out. But you're also getting a dopamine hit and you're watching something that's stimulating.
Right. And you talk about blue lights and all that. So we won't go into too much of all that stuff. But basically, you're tricking your body into thinking it needs to be releasing cortisol because blue light is emulating the same frequencies as the sun. So there's a lot of things that you can do to kind of wind yourself down. And one of the best things, and it's very, very old fashioned, is read a book. Stress Nation happens to be a good one to read, by the way.
Let's talk about products, then we'll talk about your book. So let's talk about products because you guys went through the process of creating, testing. When I if I look at our list of supplements for our patients, we got a lot of things under the sleep category. So there's a ton of products in the market. So from a business perspective, this is a terrible market to be in. But you made something that you believed in. So tell us a little bit about what you actually created and why this is something that people should try.
Okay, so we didn't create a sleep product. We created a cortisol product. And we went about this in a very unique way. Number one, we wanted to develop a product that would actually work. And let's be honest, 90 to 95% of all supplements on the market do not work. Proven studies, hundreds of them proven. You urinate them out, they never actually get absorbed by the body. And so we wanted to make sure we had a unique delivery system that actually worked. And we know that an IV or a subcutaneous injection is the best delivery method, but that is a drug. The next best methods are either a nasal spray or a lozenge. Not disputable, again, scientific fact. We happened to launch just before COVID, and we said, okay, FDA and the CDC recommends a zinc lozenge. They didn't recommend a zinc gummy. They didn't recommend a zinc pill, but they recommend a zinc lozenge for sublingual delivery. And we were like, okay, so let's emulate that. We don't know where it gets absorbed, but we know the body does absorb it. So let's just focus on a lozenge as a unique delivery system. Then we went and we spoke to very, very, very smart, intelligent doctors, far more intelligent than any of us. And they gave us a list of all the best roots and herbs, proven, thousands of studies on them that seem to help lower and support cortisol and hormonal health. And then over a period of many, many, many months, we kind of put the formulations together and we tested. And we went through 63 to 64 iterations until we found one that worked, that we liked. And then we looked at metabolism, which I think every company in the world has completely forgotten about in the supplement category, right? Your body is designed to consume whatever you put inside of it every 4 to 6 hours. When you issue pain medication for your patients, instructions say repeat every 4 to 6 hours. Antibiotics, you start taking every 4 to 6 hours. You start doing flu, cold medication every 4 to 6 hours. There's something here about 4 to 6 hours in metabolism that makes sense. And since cortisol is a 24/7 hormone that you can't control because outside factors affect it, we thought, you know what? You need something that's going to help support the body throughout the day and night. And so we decided to make these lozenges, and they taste like mints. And you take them like a cough sweet and you suck on them throughout the day as you need them. And so as you could say, most people find the mornings with their kids very stressful. They go to work, it calms down, then things start to heat up. And so they may take another one and take another one and so forth. And so the average person takes, 3 to 4 of these lozenges throughout the day. And what it's doing is it's taking the edge off. It's helping keep your cortisol levels in the normal range and not in the fight or flight category. So we want to bring it into a more even place so that you feel more calm and more even throughout the day. And then you go to night. Well, guess what? That's the longest period of time that you have without consuming food or water or anything. You are fasting at night, right? If you're sleeping 8 to 9 hours, you're fasting. And so during that time, we needed a product that would help support melatonin, but also, again, support cortisol whilst you were sleeping. And that is where we have our dream product. So we have a system of lozenges you take throughout the day and a lozenge you take just before bed to help support falling asleep and staying asleep. And then we proved it. Then we put a lot of money behind clinical studies, not just nonsense about ingredients, because let's face it, majority of companies are completely manipulating the consumer. They're saying based on thousands of studies. Well, they're saying that their ingredient that they've done has been researched thousands of times. They've pulled those studies and they're claiming the same things in those studies is equivalent to their product. But let's be honest, that's nonsense. It's absolute bullshit and it's fraudulent because they didn't test their product, because not all ingredients are treated equal and not all capsules and pills and gummies have the same coating that can be absorbed or disintegrate at the right time for time released or appropriate release in the body. And so they're nonsense. And the FDA is starting to crack down on all this nonsense. We actually did the studies. We've done dosing studies. We've done assays. We've done double-blind placebo, single placebo, and open-label studies, and then published the results, not ourselves, but through medical journals. So we can actually make claims and talk to what was done in the studies and what those participants saw versus saying, here's ashwagandha, we have ashwagandha, therefore everything about ashwagandha we can claim. Nonsense.
Yeah, that's a big issue that I see in the industry as well, because there are, gosh, so many products that are targeted, especially for bone health, but for menopausal women, menopause symptoms, perimenopause. I mean, it is a massive
It's a free for all.
multi-billion-dollar market, right?
It's a free
And
for all.
it drives me nuts when people make claims like you just said, like, oh, this study or this product will do this. And then I look for the studies, and I do videos on this all the time, and I call these out. I'm like, you can't say you can't say that. And it's one thing. I mean, one of the things you said, the study on ashwagandha showed this, so my product should do this. Okay, maybe, right? That's a maybe.
Oh, but you said should. No one says should. It says does.
Yeah, may. I think they should say may, otherwise FTC will kill them. But
Right.
yeah, but it is like, okay, well, I could kind of see that, but then there are people that take it a step further, right? Like there's a product that was BMP's oh gosh, I'm gonna forget the name of it. But anyway, I've seen products where they're making claims based off of studies that they're not even relevant to their form of delivery.
I'm sure.
And it's just amazing to me that this is allowed, and this is, I mean,
It's not allowed, but it's not allowed, but it's underfunded, and so the government can't crack down on it.
nobody's
But
watching. Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
not enough people are watching. But yeah, so everything that we have claimed and done is based on a real study that we did on our final product, not on ingredients.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that's the way to do it. Obviously, the companies would say, especially the small companies, which you guys started as, like, oh, it's expensive.
Oh, it's very expensive.
But if
Very,
you're going to
very.
launch a product, then I think you need to do the research on the product. I totally agree.
Well, here's the catch 22. We started the company researching in 2019. We incorporated in 2020. And in 2021, I got hit over the head with a brick. My wife was diagnosed with Cushing's, which is a cortisol disease. Talk about being hit over the head, right, by the universe, right? Because I was researching something I was fascinated with. And then my wife got the disease that I was fascinated with. Are you kidding me? And so that made this mission personal. What became a passion project, and I was really just excited about cortisol, turned very personal. And drugs weren't working for my wife, supplements weren't working for my wife. So this just became a maniacal mission to actually try and find a solution that actually works to help support cortisol. So this affected me in a very deep personal level. It wasn't just, hey, let's make money. It was, no, I need to solve this problem. And so I I would never do it anyway, but I know many companies do. I didn't cut any corners. I didn't compromise quality of the ingredients. I didn't compromise testing. I wanted to know that it would work. So I was doing this testing to ensure that it had some effect on the body and would be of benefit.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. So we'll link obviously to the products, and people can check them out for themselves. Tell me about your book. You went so far as to then write it all down. I know that takes a lot of work. I've written some short ones. This one's longer. Tell me more.
Well, really, this is the why behind Rebalance. Stress Nation is the why behind the company and the products, and explains chapter by chapter in very logical, simple, and nostalgic terms what's going on in the body and why and how we've gotten into this position we're in today. Going back to as we starting from pre-internet, email, social media, Netflix, before that, and how our life has evolved and changed. And that is the root cause of this elevated cortisol level that everyone's experiencing. And so the book really goes through chapter by chapter in non-medical terms for really what's happening and why.
Amazing. And it's going to be released when?
It's available for pre-order today. And you can order it through stressnationbook.com. There's links to all the different Amazon and book clubs and all those other companies that sell the books. But if you go to stressnationbook.com, I offer a free perimenopause survival guide. Basically, it's an educational course. It's 5 days, simple emails, and kind of walk through why your symptoms are exacerbated. I also have a free course on a health reset and cortisol reset with all the tips and tricks and everything, and they're all completely free. And obviously, you can pre-order the book there. The book is available for pre-order today, but actually releases September 16th nationwide.
Okay, perfect. And this will go out before September 16th, so we'll get some pre-order volume there. Awesome. Well, this has been a great review of cortisol, a topic that's actually challenging to talk about, and I'm sure you experienced that in creating all kinds of content around it. I think it's such a big deal, and it's hard for doctors to talk about it. They don't have solutions for it. They don't have drugs for it. And the supplements, a lot of times don't do any good. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I think it's been really helpful to have this discussion. Hopefully this will help people to figure out that this is something they need to pay attention to. Any last words for the audience?
Yeah, I think there's a really important one. You're not broken. Everyone thinks they're broken or something. You're not broken. You've just got, a overstimulation that no one has pinpointed and helped you through. So I don't like the preying on women that's happening online today, and these companies that are proving or trying to say, hey, I've got a course or a nutrition program or an exercise regimen specifically for you. No, they're all wrong, and they're all con artists, and they're trying to be opportunists. There's nothing wrong with you. You are going through a beautiful rite of passage, just like puberty, and your diet and your exercise really isn't any different. Everyone should be lifting weights. Only way to strengthen your bones, only way to strengthen your muscles. And all these people are preying on you, and you've got to get more confidence and understand you're not broken. You just haven't been given the right guidance and the right information, which is not that difficult to get anymore because we are here. Dr. Doug is giving you the information. You got to believe him. He's 100% correct. And there's good people out there like me that are trying to share information for free in order to help you.
Amazing. Well, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely love that sentiment. So thank you so much for sharing it. And thanks for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks so much for listening to this video with Justin High. I hope you found it helpful, and I hope you took away some things that can potentially help you to reduce stress in your life. Again, this is a lifestyle problem. This is the people around you problem. This is a society problem, a news problem. It is everywhere. So hopefully it's not overwhelming, and you can pick some things to start working on in your life so that you can help reduce the cortisol. I was thinking, as I was actually listening to this interview and his answers, I'm thinking about all the things in my own life that I could be doing. And there's a lot. So I'm definitely falling prey to this as well. So I would encourage you to read the book, Stress Nation. Check it out. He told you the website. We're going to link to it that you can go to so you can get all those free resources as well. And remember, if you are looking for more answers about your bone and you haven't been to our masterclass yet, please consider coming to our masterclass. Our masterclass is where we talk about the top 5 mistakes that we see for people on a bone health journey. And we go through those mistakes. We talk about kind of how we're looking at bone health now as a biomarker of health span. And it's a really interesting way to perceive osteoporosis and bone health. We give lots of examples of people reversing their osteoporosis. And then we leave about 20, 25 minutes for Q&A. So if you haven't done that and you're on a bone health journey, please let me help you collapse your time to success by telling you about the errors that we see other people make so that you don't have to make them. Link for that's in the description on YouTube, or you can head over to our community, the Osteo Collective, and that's at osteocollective.com, and you can sign up for the masterclass there.